Ride Review, 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800. There is a tongue-in-cheek joke amongst moto journalists when it comes to new MV Agusta models, that each new machine is the best motorcycle yet, from the Italian brand. The unspoken punchline of course is that each new model has such an incredibly low bar to surpass, that it is relatively easy to be the next best motorcycle in the lineup, and thus it's easy to lead a bike review with such a hyperbolic statement. That joke has been slowly fading away though, and it is becoming more of an honest reality, as MV Agusta's motorcycle lineup has evolved from a family of luridly appealing motorcycles that unfortunately are also deeply flawed, to a brand of machine that can boast the competence to match its striking beauty. Nothing better proves this point than MV Agusta's 3-cylinder platform, which was mired by half-baked electronics and fueling at its debut in 2013, and now survives as a supersport/middleweight platform that should be on every rider's short list of must-ride motorcycles. It is this trend that sees MV Agusta now updating its 800cc platform for 2016. The 675cc machines will see an update soon enough, notably with 4 Euro emission controls in full effect. It seemed when MV Agusta debuted only a solitary machine at the 2015 EICMA show, the MV Agusta Brutale 800, with less power, more weight, and subtle design revision, that the Varese-based company had taken a step backwards from its forward progress. Now that we have had the opportunity to ride the machine in Malaga, Spain, we can see that is not the case. The new Brutale 800 signals an elevation of MV Agusta, from a brand with a shiny veneer and little beneath the surface, to a motorcycle company that can not only tug on the heartstrings of our moto lust, but can also pique our more reasonable senses into seeing the substance beyond the glossy paint and subtle lines. Quite simply put, the 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800 is the best machine to come from Varese. The ride. To make this assessment, MV Agusta brought us out to the Mediterranean coast, to Malaga, Spain, just a short trip to the Strait of Gibraltar. A 150 kilometers out and back from Marbella to Rondo, our route took us via expressway through the city of Malaga, onto patchy city streets, and then finally into the mountainside that resides above the coast. A perfect mixture of conditions. The route was well suited to the typical riding one would do with the MV Agusta Brutale 800-, giving us a mix of urban use, along with a proper throttle thrashing on the fast mountain sweepers. Our ride was spirited and fast, perhaps too much so, as it gained too much attention from the Guardia Civil, and our antics were cut somewhat short. No worries, officer, we'll just get some lunch then. Much praise can be heaped upon MV Agusta's 798cc 3-cylinder engine platform. Virtually all the tuners we respect sing praises about the design of the triple, both for its power and its compact packaging. The 2016 version of the MV Agusta Brutale 800 makes a rated 116 horsepower at the crankshaft, down 9 horsepower from the 2015 model. A fair loss in peak power. The trade-off comes with MV Agusta adjusting the timing via the shape of the cam lobes, which as a result pulls the Brutale 800's now flatter torque lower into the rev range. The result makes for bad spec sheet racing, but bodes well for street riders, who spend far more time in the middle of the rev range than they do at the top end. That's not to say that we wouldn't like to see more horsepower from the 798cc 3-cylinder engine, as the new Brutale 800 lacks that extra punch we enjoy on larger displacement machines. But for a middleweight power plant, MV Agusta's triple continues to shine. Power wheelies out of first and second are easy to achieve, and there is enough torque to ride spiritedly while keeping the bike in fourth gear, when you don't want to work as hard for your two-wheeled enjoyment. As you would expect, the downside to MV Agusta's tinkering with the valve timing is that it leaves the Brutale 800 with a less than brutal surge of power as you rev to redline. Instead, the affair is more blunted as you go north on the tachometer, with power building from revs, instead of mechanical torque. In the end, the trade-off is one that is well made and practical. The 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800 has great acceleration off the apex, thanks to its flat torque curve between 5,500 and 9,000 RPMs, which easily exceeds any use that one would have outside of the racetrack. Supersport and superbike riders, who live their life at the top of the rev range, will have to adjust their riding style to suit, but any Brutale 800 owner who rides on city streets will see the immediate benefit, as they race from stoplight to stoplight. Fans of the previous Brutale 800 will miss some of the exhaust note's loudness, with 4 Euro standards tightly controlling now how much noise not only the exhaust can make, but also the motorcycle as a whole. A raspy tone is still there though, and should sufficiently soothe more visceral riders. The Brutale 800 6-speed gearbox is mated to a slipper clutch that is hydraulically actuated, the only bike to do so in its class, as MV Agusta is keen to point out. Another feature in this category that is exclusive to MV Agusta, the Brutale 800 is also fitted with MV Agusta's Ease 2.0 QUICKSHIFTER, which auto-blips and rev matches. And more importantly, it handles QUICKSHIFTS both up and down the gearbox. The Ease 2.0 system has been greatly improved for 2016, and makes the clutch lever almost unnecessary to the ride the Brutale 800. The only fault we can give the Ease, and the gearbox in general, were the several false neutrals we encountered, primarily while downshifting. We wouldn't call the QUICKSHIFTER issue critical, though we wouldn't call the Brutale 800 gearbox dead to rights reliable either. While the engine of the 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800 is perhaps the most surprising element on the machine, especially if you were like us, as we were lamenting the spec sheet upon its debut at EICMA. However, it is the chassis of the new Brutale 800 that wins us over. That shouldn't really surprise those familiar with the newer Brutale models, as the chassis has always been highly regarded by testers and riders alike. As expected, the latest edition is no different. MV Agusta has made several subtle changes to its Roadster for 2016, namely a reduced steering head angle, which accompanies more trail on the front wheel. The Affect is a motorcycle that absorbs and handles uncertain road conditions with a much higher degree of aplomb. The trade-off comes with a reduction in turning response, though we doubt most riders would notice the deficit as it is fairly subtle. Fitted with Marzocchi forks and a Sachs rear shock, the suspension on the 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800 is fully adjustable. Our bike was set up with settings that seem to favor heavier riders, who like a moderately stiff ride from their motorcycle. We imagine those who fit a more Italian body size will find the ride fairly stiff, and will want to adjust the preload to their preference. Hitting several of the harsh road transitions on the way to Rondo, it is evident that MV Agusta made the right choice in this trial of compromises on the chassis geometry, especially in the headstock. Every time when the chassis and suspension were tested, the Brutale 800 held its line and soaked up what the road threw at it. The suspension was stable, and without any obvious pumping actions. Equally important, the front wheel didn't seem susceptible to being coaxed out of line. Out of the box, the 2016 MV Agusta should be well suited for Mad in America riders, but thankfully MV Agusta has left the ample opportunity on the table to adjust the Brutale 800 to one's own preference. It's refreshing to see a manufacturer that understands adjustable suspension should be standard on all motorcycles made in the 21st century. It's perhaps wrong to leave the electronics of the 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800 buried so deep into this review. As we have stated already, the weak points of the MV Agusta line, especially its 3-cylinder machines, hasn't been their engines and chassis, it has been in the electronics. The average rider perhaps does not realize 1. How revolutionary ride-by-wire throttle control is to the motorcycle industry, and thus 2. How crucial it is for a motorcycle manufacturer to get this part of the machine right, out of the box. To this end, MV Agusta has made huge strides in developing its electronics package for its lineup, and the evidence in that progress has been the marked increase in the readability and enjoyment that each successive model has brought to the table. With the MV Agusta Turismo Veloce, the Italian manufacturer for the first time presented a model that seemed fully baked from the factory. We were deeply impressed with the adventure sport machine when we rode it in France last year, and though it wasn't a faultless machine, very few are, it was a model that MV Agusta could be proud of from a technical perspective. The 2016 MV Agusta Brutale 800 picks up where the Turismo Veloce left off, and instead of a model that merely meets expectations of our incredibly high standard, MV Agusta has introduced a machine with an electronics package that should cause other manufacturers to stop and take note. Since last year's models, MV Agusta has continued to refine its proprietary ride-by-wire (RBW) system, and the development is starting to pay off. Packaged into the MVX 2.0 electronics suite, MV Agusta's ride-by-wire provides immediate and precise throttle inputs for the rider. The effect is a subtle one, and best tested with fine throttle twists, but it is gravely important to the overall user experience. We cannot overstate the importance of well-executed design, and the understanding that this is what separates Screa